Today we're going to be checking out the LCFR speaker from Lichtlaerm Audio. This is something I've definitely wanted to have in for a while, and once I finally got my Prometheus amplifier, I did hit him up saying like, yo, could you send over one of those LCFR speakers that I've gotten to try in the Prometheus cab since you brought the first one out to NAMM a couple of years ago. And Daniel from Lichtlaerm was kind enough to send one over for me to check out. And this speaker really isn't trying to sound like another speaker. It's not like, oh, this is like a vintage 30 but this, or this is like a K100 but this. They were really trying to do their own thing. They were working with Fane, and I think they made something really cool and interesting. So let's get into the features of this thing, and a common theme that's going to come up is this is going to have a lot of intention behind it. They really thought out what they wanted this to be. So first, its magnet is a ceramic magnet. It can handle a whopping 150 watts. They did this because they wanted it to be very high headroom. Its EQ curve, it can go from 55 hertz, so fairly low, all the way up to 5,000, which you'll note isn't super high, but it's not dull. I was a little worried once I got this home with my own rig, it might be a little dark sounding, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that it wasn't. It just rolls off a lot of that top-end harshness and fizz that you don't want. So honestly, a really good idea and really well thought out. There's also a really nice resonance peak around 65 hertz, and if anyone doesn't know, that's where the palm mutes live, those big chunky palm mutes. So you can get those without getting a ton of the extra mud around it. Also a super good idea. And then basically this thing lives in between where it rolls off at 5,000 and kind of that 65 hertz where it has a bit of a peak. So it has this interesting complex mid-range where you have the cut and kind of bite where you want it, but not so much that it gets harsh like something like a V30 can, be known to do. It saturates well with whatever amp you're plugging into it across the mid-range spectrum, so it sounds full and present in the mix, but you're not getting a lot of that wooden honky, lower mid-range as well. Just overall super well thought out. So while Daniel was cool enough to send this over for me to check out with my Prometheus, he obviously didn't send me a whole, Lichtlaerm cabinet. So I plugged this into my KSR-412. It's a really big oversized cabinet. And then I was plugging into that cabinet with my Prometheus, and in between them, just for, not peeling paint off of the walls. I did use my Captor X as an attenuator to lower the volume a bit because that amp is extremely loud and it would have been just ear-shattering in here, but it worked out just fine. And then I was recording that with just a SM57, and I had that right in that sweet spot between the cone and the dome, and I moved it around a bit and just kind of a little bit over just to kind of get it where I wanted, but it's basically right in between the cone and the dome. And just before we get to the out of mix, you're going to hear some guitars in mono, then you'll hear some also in stereo, just so we can kind of get a feel of how it sounds, you know, with a couple of guitars panned hard right and left. There will be a bit of a clean section as well, so you can hear how this speaker handles clean, not just high gain. And there's going to be a tiny bit of post-processing EQ, just a high and low pass filter, so you're not hearing any of that rumble that you don't need, that's basically inaudible sub-bass crap, and none of the top-end stuff that's, you know, fizz that gets in the way. And there is a notch at 4K just to, you know, make sure that we're not getting that super unpleasant whistle. And I'm doing that because I want to focus on the actual sound of the speaker and the distortion running through it, and not a bunch of the stuff that clouds it up and distracts you from what it actually sounds like. So let's check it out. So I think it's an absolutely fantastic sounding speaker. And I did realize I forgot to mention what guitar I was using. I have my KM Mark III Schecter, the Cult Effects version, running into the front end of the Prometheus, and that has a M7 from Lundgren in the bridge. But anyway, back to the speaker. I think you were able to hear what I was talking about. Nice, chunky palm mutes. It's definitely cutting without being harsh. It doesn't have a ton of extra top end, so it's not like a super bright speaker, but it isn't dark by any means, and just has a really nice mid-range to it. I think it's cool that they tried to do something different and didn't want to go with the same tried and true, like, we're trying to be XYZ, the same 3 or 4 speakers that everyone likes and keeps buying. They wanted to do something interesting with modern high-gain metal players in mind, and I think that's awesome, and it definitely pairs really well with this amp. Now, this speaker is definitely going to make some other appearances on the channel. I already have a different microphone video planned with this, and I have a couple of other speaker videos planned in future, and I'm definitely going to compare this to a few others in future, like the DV77, and I have a few others planned as well, but not sure exactly of which yet. But that way you'll be able to hear the differences side by side of these different speakers, all in this same setup. I'd be interested to know your thoughts if you've actually gone to try out this speaker at NAMM, or if you have one of these cabs or one of these speakers. Would love to know your thoughts down below, but thanks for watching. Stay metal.